Diplomat's Archives, Hidden Stories. This is the third story. Today's story begins in November 1923 with articles published in a newspaper from the Celje region located in what is now Slovenia. These articles, titled Im Land der Morgenstille in German and In the Land of the Morning Calm in English, were sent to us by the Embassy of Slovenia in Seoul. The name of the author who wrote these articles is Alma Karlin. Slovenia is a country located in Central Europe, about 8,700 kilometers away from Korea. Over a century ago, a female explorer from this distant land left behind a record of Korea. We decided to meet with the Slovenian ambassador to South Korea to ask about who Alma Karlin was and how she came to write articles about Korea over 100 years ago.
Okay, so first, could you briefly tell us about Alma Karlin?
She was a Slovenian that actually traveled the world as the first or one of the rare independent women that traveled the whole globe by herself. And she is also an inspiration. She is an inspiration in the sense that she was a woman in the early 20th century when the situation of women was, I would say, very restrictive from cultural point of view also in Europe. And she didn't have the funding, she didn't have a benefactor. She decided to go around the world by herself to fund her own travels. And this is also why she managed to have a deeper look inside different cultures and different societies, because she was actually living there. And I think that for a woman in an early 20th century, this is a very significant feature.
We also had the opportunity to hold video interviews with experts in Slovenia who have studied Alma Karlin extensively and written numerous papers about her. Professor Chikako Shigemori Buchar is a scholar of Japanese studies and an expert on East Asian artifacts based in Slovenia. She has written several fascinating papers about Alma Karlin as well.
We have been doing research on the East-West exchanges in general, especially with the Central European countries or nations with the East Asian nations. And this is one of the earliest contacts between Korea and Slovenia or Central Europe.
Professor Kang Byung-young has been teaching Korean studies at the University of Ljubljana in Slovenia since 2013. He has also written some papers on Alma Karlin as well.
알마 카른이 태어난 도시가 있는데요. 젤리에라고 하는데 아주 역사가 긴 도시예요. 그 로마 시대 때부터 그때 도시가 형성되어 있어서 그 도시에는 로마 유물들이 있어요. 그래서 그 유물을 구경하러 제가 젤리에 기차 타고 갔는데 그 기차역 바로 앞에 광장이 있고 그 광장에 아주 작은 여성인데 여행 가방을 든 동상이 있더라고요. 그 바로 동상의 주인공이 알마 카를린이었습니다. 그래서 호기심이 생겼고 그 뒤로는 이제 그 학교에서 연구하는 프로젝트에 제가 포함됐는데 그때 이제 알마 카를린이 동아시아도 여행을 했고 한국도 여행을 해서 그것에 대해서 제가 연구할 수 있는 기회가 생겼던 것입니다.
Over a century ago, a Slovenian woman named Alma Karlin traveled the world alone, even making her way to the Korean peninsula. Who exactly was this remarkable woman? Alma Karlin was born on October 12, 1889 in Celje, which is now part of Slovenia. At the time, Slovenia was part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. Some scholars who have studied Alma Karlin suggest that as a Slovene living in the Austro-Hungarian Empire, she likely struggled a great deal with questions about her identity.
그 당시에 슬로베니아는 오스트리아 헝가리 제국이었고요. 그러니까 본인들은 슬로베니아 사람이라고 생각하지만 오스트리아 헝가리 제국이었고 그 공용어는 당연히 독일어였습니다. 오스트리아 헝가리 제국에 살면서 독일어를 쓰지만 슬로베니아인이라는 생각, 이런 것들이 정체성이 무엇인지 고민하게 만들었던 것 같고,
She is a Slovene. Both her parents are of Slovenian origin, but they chose to use the German language because of the political situation at that time.
서유럽의 민족주의는 저는 정치적 민족주의적 성향이 강해요. 정치적인 영토적 경계와 국적에 따라서 우위와 대의를 나눠요. 우리 민족과 그들 민족을. 반면에 동유럽은요, 굉장히 외세 지배하에서 여러 가지로 영토가 분류됐던 경험을 가지고 있어요. 그렇기 때문에 중요한 게 내가 정치적 어디 국가, 국적이 중요한 게 아니에요. 이 민족이 여기 있는 사람이 나랑 같은 종교를 공유하고 있느냐, 문화를 공유하고 있느냐, 라는 문화적 요소에 따라서 우리 민족과 그들 민족을 나눠요. 그러한 민족 정체성으로 인한 나중에 슬로베니아인과 오스트리아인 사이에 있어서 갈등 문제가 알마 까를린의 여행을 가게 된, 세계 여행을 가게 된 중요한 계기가 된다라고 할 수가 있습니다.
Alma Karlin also grew up in a very strict household environment. In particular, Alma's mother was said to be overly fixated on Alma's physical features and perceived flaws.
Na vse načine se je trudila, da bi zravnala mojo postavo. Izpostavljena sem bila telesnemu in duševnemu trpinčenju.
It was no surprise that Alma longed to break free from her family.
She was really under the strict, I would say, under the strict control of her mother, and she wanted to break out of this.
편안하고 자유로운 가족 분위기는 아니었던 것 같고요. 그러니까 역시 또 막 쾌활하고 그런 성격이 아니라면 주눅이 들 수도 있고 또 집안에 자꾸 있고 이럴 수 있었을 텐데, 더군다나 알마 카를린은 몸이 무척 허약한 어린이였고, 그리고 또 소아마비가 있었고, 그리고 또 한쪽 팔을 잘 쓰지 못했다는 뭐 그런 얘기도 제가 들었습니다. 그러니까 신체적으로도 다른 사람에 비해서는 약자였던 것 같아요. 그러니까 자기 안에서 자기를 찾아야 돼서 여러 가지 책도 많이 읽고, 그리고 또 외국어 공부도 스스로 많이 했거든요. 그러니까 처음에는 지적 탐구를 통해서 자아를 찾으려고 했던 것 같아요. 그리고 그 다음 단계로 더 큰 세상을 보고 자기가 누군지 알아가는 과정을 찾으려고 했던 것 같습니다.
This family background may have been what inspired Alma Karlin to dream of a bigger, more distant world beyond her own. From a young age, Alma Karlin studied French and English, and in 1908 she moved to London, where she went on to learn Norwegian, Danish, Italian, Swedish, Spanish, Russian, and Sanskrit. When World War I broke out and Austria-Hungary and Britain became enemy nations, Alma Karlin could no longer stay in Britain. So she left for Scandinavia. After returning to Celje, she founded a language school. There, she began preparing for a journey into the unknown world, a dream she had cherished since childhood.
알마 까를린이 활동했을 당시가 세계사적으로 굉장히 격동의 시기였습니다. 이제 1차 세계대전 당시에 아시다시피 오스트리아가 세르비아랑 전쟁을 선포하면서 세계대전으로 확산이 되게 되는데, 그 당시 알마 까를린이 영국에서 번역가로 하고 있었거든요. 영국 입장에서 봤을 때 알마 까를린은 적국의 오스트리아인 정체성을 갖고 있었으니까 적국의 시민이었죠. 그래서 이단화 취급을 받았었고 환영받지 못했던 인물입니다. 연합국, 유럽 국가들 여기저기서. 고향으로 딱 돌아왔을 때 딱 보니까 고향에서도 역시 환영을 못 받아요. 왜냐면은 1차 세계대전이 끝나고 나서 남슬라브족 통합국가가 만들어진 거예요. 남슬라브족 통합국가에서 자기는 슬로베니아인도 아니고 오스트리아인도 아닌 거야. 나중에 보면은 아시겠지만 그녀가 1919년 1월에 와가지고 11월에 세계 여행을 가버리거든요.
Perhaps her desire to break away from her surroundings and see a larger world was her way of trying to discover who she truly was amidst the turbulent times. And so, in 1919, with just $130 and a typewriter, she finally set off on the world journey she had always dreamed of. The country she first intended to visit was none other than Japan. But why did she want to visit Japan first?
I think Europe, as such, in the early 20th century, was already inspired by Asia. I think that there is a term of Japanization in Europe, where spring blossoming and geishas and so-called exotic, for European terms, was becoming very popular. She was inspired by Asia, I think, during her times when studying in London.
When she was learning languages, she was in London as well, and also in Sweden and other countries. At that time, she had some friends from Asia. We have evidence that she got some postcards from London from a Japanese person who introduced some incidents in Japan. And maybe her friends also mentioned some new things to her.
However, Alma Karlin's plans to go directly to Japan were thwarted due to financial issues or a paperwork mistake. After leaving Celje, she traveled to Genoa and then she went to Peru in South America. After arriving in Peru, she is said to have remarked, "If all roads lead to Rome, sooner or later they'll surely lead me to Japan." After traveling through Peru, Panama, Mexico, the United States, and Hawaii, Alma Karlin finally arrives in Japan. Alma Karlin arrived in Japan and lived there for about a year. In order to support herself while living in Japan, she worked in various places, including Meiji University and the German Embassy in Japan. She also worked as a correspondent for the Asahi Shimbun newspaper.
She had some language knowledge to get in contact with German-speaking, maybe English-speaking people. It's not a big circle of people. And she didn't learn Japanese nor Korean, any Asian languages. So I think she was limited to a certain circle. But we know in one of her writings, she mentions, I think it's an English teacher. They went together to Nikko, one of the tourist attractions. So she was accepted by some people with knowledge of the Western countries or Western technologies.
Alma Karlin, who remained in Japan from June 1922 to July 1923, finally arrived in Korea in early July 1923. During her stay, she was a guest of a Japanese family living in Seoul. She arrived in Busan by boat from Kyushu, Japan, and then traveled by train to Seoul. After staying in Seoul for a while, she continued her journey by train to Pyongyang. It seems that she stayed in Korea for at least a few weeks. Although she stayed in Korea for a short time, Alma Karlin wrote 3 articles about Korea, which were published in a newspaper called Cillier Zeitung. Cillier Zeitung was one of the most important newspapers published in German in the Celje region at the time. What did Korea look like through her eyes 100 years ago?
In the land of the morning calm. From the mountains surrounding Busan, the bustling footsteps from boat to train, we finally enter a realm beyond all imagination. Just 8 hours by sea from Japan and positioned at the narrowest point of a short strait, the country feels like a world apart, as different as can be, in its spirit and way of life. On the train, I was surrounded by Korean students, changing from kimonos into their traditional white attire as they headed to their hometown. The Koreans were tall, their skin was darker than the Japanese, with soft and dreamy eyes that looked visibly sad. Sadness that only a people who have long been oppressed can possess. There are mountains here. The mountain ranges shift closer and then stretch far apart. They stretch on in a bizarre, almost surreal form, covered by thick forest, presenting an indescribable, picturesque scene. But what captivated me even more was the market. There, in the back of baskets, sat tall, thin Koreans wearing white robes, quietly waiting without any hawking. The market displayed red chilies, dried chestnuts, large pears, coarse beans, sweet potatoes, sesame, and zucchini.
But at that time, was the country of Korea known in Europe? And if so, what kind of country was it known as?
I'm not 100% sure. Whatever I say is based on my studies and my personal opinions. But I think because the times also for Korea in early 20th century, Korea was occupied by Japan. So I think that not a lot was talked about Korea or Joseon. So it was more or less considered as Japan. But she tried to uncover the beliefs that Joseon actually exists and it's different than Japan. She always used the term the land of the morning calm. And I think that she rightfully also experienced by herself that Joseon and Korea is different than Japan.
Alma Karlin visited Korea in 1923. At that time, Korea was forcibly annexed by Japan and under colonial rule. Given this context, the articles Alma Karlin wrote about Korea held significant meaning.
알마 까를린이 활동했을 때 이 시기가 우리 한국은 일본의 속국으로서 지배를 받고 있었던 상황이거든요. 그러니까 그 유럽인들의 시각에서 보자 그러면은 이 한국이라는 나라는 사라져버린 아시아의 작은 왕조 국가였어요. 인식 자체가 그랬어요. 특히 유럽 역사가나 문화, 예술가들 입장에서 봤을 때는 한국의 문화는 중국의 아류 문화, 혹은 일본의 또 문화 발달 정책에 따라서 거의 일본의 종속문화처럼 인식이 되고 있던 시기였어요. 그렇기 때문에 알마 까를린이 한국만의 독특한 이런 유산들을 또 뭐 소식들을 전달해주고 알려줬다라는 것은 그 자체만 갖고도 한국의 독특한 매력과 아름다움을 유럽에 소개시켰다는 데에서 굉장히 의미가 있다라고 할 수가 있는 것이죠.
During her time in Korea, Alma Karlin collected many photos and postcards capturing Korean landscapes and even received a fan as a gift from a Korean. The Celje Regional Museum preserves 16 postcards, 39 photographs, and 2 fans that she collected during her time in Korea. At first glance, the items she brought back from Korea may seem quite ordinary, but through these items, certain historical facts about Korea that were previously misunderstood have been uncovered, and new historical possibilities have been proposed. This is one of the photographs Alma Karlin collected in Korea. It shows a funeral procession in front of Taeanmun Gate. Many media outlets, writers, and scholars initially presumed that this photo depicted the funeral of Emperor Gojong, Empress Myeongseong, or Emperor Sunjong. However, Professor Kang Byung-young pointed out various details, such as the period when the photo was taken, the fact that it was actually taken in front of Taeanmun Gate rather than Taehanmun, and the design of the mourning clothes seen in the picture, to suggest that the photo was in fact taken during the funeral of Empress Sun Myung-hyo, the first wife of Emperor Sunjong, who was the son of Emperor Gojong.
피란이라는 도시에서 연락이 왔습니다. 그러니까 여기 알마 카린 전시하는데 한국 관련된 것들이 있는 것 같으니 네가 와서 한번 보렴? 그래서 이제 피란의 그 박물관에 갔는데 엽서들이 막 있더라고요. 근데 딱 봐도 한국 것이고 한국 말이 막 쓰여져 있는 엽서도 있고 해요. 그래서 그걸 찍어서 이렇게 쭉 봤는데 뭔가 내가 알고 있는 그 일제시대의 한국은 아닌 것 같다는 생각을 하게 된 거죠. 그래서 그 엽서들이 어떤 것인지 궁금해서 알마 카를린으로 출발했지만 사실은 한국의 엽서들, 그 당시에 20년대, 30년대 일제시대의 엽서들이 어떤 역할을 했는지까지 좀 궁금하게 돼서 그것에 대해서 조금 더 깊게 공부하게 된 거고, 신비롭게도 한국에 대한 공부죠, 결국은. 근데 슬로베니아인을 통해서 그 한국에 대한 그 역사 공부를 하게 된 것입니다.
One photograph that Alma Karlin collected over 100 years ago. A single photo that a century later would inspire a Korean studies scholar living in Slovenia. After leaving Korea, Alma Karlin traveled through Manchuria, China, Taiwan, Australia, the Philippines, New Zealand, Indonesia, Thailand, India, and other countries before returning to Celje in 1927. However, she was not warmly welcomed in her hometown. Few people showed interest in her experiences of traveling through many countries or in the artifacts she had collected.
When she was traveling, Slovenia became part of the Kingdom of Yugoslavia, and this Yugoslavia became then the Socialist Federal Republic of Yugoslavia, so one of the socialist countries. So many of the people in her town, Celje, looked at her as not very welcome, very strange. Except for a small number of people around her, people didn't get to know her. Her images and objects from Asia, because she wanted to have some exhibitions and so on. That's why she brought back things, but she didn't have the occasion to have a big exhibition.
We can assume that one reason why she did not receive much attention might be that Europe, including Celje, was experiencing a time of great turmoil and change. The First World War, which lasted from 1914 to 1919, reshaped world maps and redrew many of Europe's borders. In 1939, about 10 years after Alma Karlin returned home, the Second World War broke out, and it brought another wave of chaos. During the war, large parts of present-day Slovenian territory were annexed by Germany, Italy, and Hungary. But even amid such circumstances, she resisted Nazi Germany and even helped Jewish people, which led to her arrest by German forces.
She was very strongly always against dictatorship, against authoritarianism, and she was very focused on human rights and on the right of individual to be what he wants to be or what she wants to be. So when she came back from the world travel, of course, the situation in Europe, especially in Central Europe, was changing with the rise of Nazism and the rise of intolerance. I think that in 1944 she was also imprisoned. She went to prison because of her ideas and her opposition to occupation of Slovenia by Germany.
In 1950, she passed away from cancer. Alma Karlin only began to receive attention from the world after Slovenia declared its independence and established the Republic of Slovenia in 1991.
I think that it was the idea also of Slovenia gaining independence and trying to portray us on the world map. Her ideas are very similar to the ideas of Slovenia as such. So I think that at least in Slovenia she was regaining importance.
People's minds changed with the political situation. Slovenia is independent. She is from Slovenia. And she did bring back interesting things. And at the same time, Korea, Japan, and China are very popular now because of our department. Students are studying Korean, Japanese, Chinese things, and naturally connected to these studies, these things that she brought back are very interesting.
Alma Karlin, a woman who traveled the world alone in the early 20th century. Living in many countries, she was a pioneer in world travel and a figure of inspiration to many. In today's terms, we might even call her a global influencer. Moreover, she can be considered as one of the first people to connect Korea and Slovenia.
어쩌면 정말로 슬로베니아인 중에 최초로 한국을 밟은 사람일 수도 있으니까 역사적으로 혹은 또 서사라는 측면에서 충분히 좋은 가치가 있다고 생각합니다. 그래서 이것을 통해서 더 많은 것들을 알게 되고 또 우리가 또 슬로베니아뿐만 아니라 다른 외국에 대해서 알게 되는 계기로 만들 수 있지 않을까요?
우리는 이제 서유럽의 자료들은 많이 우리 한국 관련된 자료나 유물들이 많이 소개가 됐어요. 그런데 다른 유럽 지역에는 아직도 발굴되지 않은 자료가 굉장히 많을 겁니다. 이 알마 까를린이 한국을 소개했다라는 이걸 계기를 통해서 좀 더 관심을 가지고 좀 더 파헤쳐보고 찾아볼 수 있는 계기가 되지 않을까라는 차원에서 어떤 알마 까를린의 업적이 우리한테는 크게 다가오지 않을까라는 생각을 가져봅니다.
I think that what we are trying to portray is basically that even when Slovenia was not a country, independent country, Slovenian society and individuals from Slovenia had already had an experience with Korea. So our cultural exchange, I would say, goes way back. And I think that this is a very solid foundation for what we are trying to do right now with the opening of the embassy and the opening of the Korean embassy in Ljubljana, that we have a long history of cultural exchange and of understanding each other.
The hidden story between Korea and Slovenia was that of Alma Karlin, the Slovenian traveler who visited Korea over 100 years ago. Though she has passed away, Koreans and Slovenians today are getting to know each other more closely through the records and artifacts she left behind.
A faint light will shine on you, and that will be enough. As readers will fall in love with you. Oh, land of the morning calm.